This is my Korean 3410 final project, A Taxi Driver by Joshua Doe. And for the film background and introduction, A Taxi Driver is directed by Jang Hoon, and it's a historical fiction movie that reviews the journalists involved in the 1980s Gwangju uprising. The movie stars a taxi driver who unexpectedly drives a journalist to Gwangju. The film was a major success in South Korea, being the second highest grossing film in 2017 and the 13th highest grossing film of all time. And the film has also won 23 awards from various competitions in Asia. So the film was produced from July 5th, 2016 to October 2016, and it was released on August 2nd, 2017, and the box office was 88.7 million United States dollars. So the director in charge of the film was Jang Hoon, and he originally worked as an assistant director under Kim Ki-duk. And some of the films he produced were Rough Cut, being his debut film in 2008, A Secret Reunion in 2010, The Front Line in 2011, and finally, A Taxi Driver in 2017. He won over 13 film awards from A Taxi Driver, with the most notable being first place in the Seoul Awards Grand Prize film competition. And his education was from Seoul National University. So the leading actor in Taxi Driver was Song Kang-ho as Kim Man-sob, and he's the widowed taxi driver that lives with his daughter. He's also obsessed with his money, so he can give his daughter the best life possible. And he has pretty good character development throughout the movie, initially being scared of leaving his daughter and being obsessed with making money, but later he realizes he is aiding a cause bigger than his own, leading him to prioritize driving his taxi over all else. And his character is based on Kim Sabok, who was the real life taxi driver, and he this actor has also starred in other famous films such as Parasite in 2019, Joint Security Area in 2000, and Snowpiercer. Thomas Kretschmann was playing as Jürgen Hinspeter, the journalist in A Taxi Driver, and he was a reporter who filmed the Gwangju uprising. And in the movie, he's pretty adamant about going to Gwangju to report on the uprising, since other journalists, especially foreign journalists, were barred from visiting. And he develops a bond with Kim Man-sob, being acquainted with him as the movie progresses. And near the end of the movie, he tries to search for Kim after a few years, but he can't locate him. Some of the supporting actors include Yoo Hae-jin as the Gwangju taxi driver who helps Kim while he's in Gwangju, and the university student played by Ryu Jun-yo, and he helps translate English for Hinspeter in Gwangju. So part of the historical context for this movie dates back to Syngman Rhee and the protests, because he was the first president of South Korea, but he was very oppressive to his citizens. And after he was ousted, Park Chung-hee took control of the government through a military coup, and he also repressed the media and citizens through the Yushin Constitution. And after his assassination, Chun Do-hwan took control of the South Korea military through a coup, and Chun persuaded the current president, Choi Kyu-ha, to make him the Korean CIA director, which allowed him to declare martial law. And South Korean citizens protested his regime, and Gwangju, a hotspot for oppression, was the center of democratic movements. When students gathered at Cheonbam National University to protest, they were beaten by the military, and Chun also sent in special forces to quell the protests, but this led to more citizens joining. And citizens armed themselves with bats, and they also raided police stations for weapons, leading to the military to retreat. But a few days later, they came back with tanks and helicopters, and this ultimately subdued the protesters. And the military claimed there were around 200 deaths, but civilians claim there are around 2,000 deaths. So for the synopsis of the movie, the main character Kim Man-sob is introduced as a taxi driver who lives in Seoul that is trying to provide for his daughter, and he overhears that there is 100,000 won payment for a person for driving a person to Gwangju, and Kim ultimately steals the client from another taxi driver, and he isn't really aware of the events that are happening in Gwangju due to the suppression of the media, and he tries to return to Seoul multiple times after he is stopped by the military and has second thoughts on continuing. But eventually, Kim finds out that the person who he is driving is Jürgen Hinspeter, who tells Kim to call him as Peter in the movie, and he's a journalist who wants to document the events in Gwangju, but they're also stopped many times by soldiers, but they manage to sneak in due to Peter posing as a businessman. Once in Gwangju, Kim tries to return to Seoul to avoid the protests, but he ends up witnessing the effects of the protesters after, or the effects of the protests after driving a mother to the hospital to look for her child. And Hinspeter is also at the hospital and realizes that Kim tried to abandon him since Kim tried to drive back to Seoul, but he ultimately returns. And Hinspeter tries to pay him part of the fare, but the other taxi drivers around him and the college students refuse to let Kim take the money until the full trip is completed. Later, Kim and Hinspeter follow a college student, Jasik, to a protest where they are ambushed by plainclothes officers, and the plainclothes officers want to capture Hinspeter due to his status as a journalist, and the officers also know that there have been no reporters in Gwangju, and they don't want the world to know about the protests. Later in the evening, the three are watching television with the family when the television station is bombed, and the three go out to film the event, but when they're at the station and recording, the college student Jasik is captured by an officer, but Hinspeter and Kim manage to escape. And in the morning, Kim tries to return to Seoul by using a fake license plate, but he feels guilty leaving Hinspeter behind, so he returns again. During the time he left, he realizes, when he returns to Gwangju and discovers the violence inflicted on the civilians is much worse than he expected, and he sees Jasik dead in the hospital, he has to convince Hinspeter to keep reporting on the situation and recording what's going on. And he ultimately does convince Hinspeter to keep recording the atrocities the government is committing, and they decide to go to another protest. At this protest, government soldiers are shooting civilians even if they are assisting the wounded, and Kim and the other taxi drivers assist by driving their taxis to go pick up the wounded. And the next day, this is when Kim and Hinspeter try to leave Gwangju, but they are stopped by a military roadblock. The inspecting soldier does find the Seoul taxi plates in the trunk, but he lets them pass anyway. And as they drive through the roadblock, the soldiers are alerted that there is a Seoul taxi that needs to be stopped, and they report to the plainclothes soldiers that a taxi with the matching plate has passed through the roadblock, and then the plainclothes soldiers proceed to chase Kim and Hinspeter, but Kim and Hinspeter manage to escape due to the help of the other Gwangju taxi drivers. Finally, Kim takes Hinspeter to the airport where Kim gives him a fake name and phone number, and when Hinspeter tries to return to Korea, he attempts to find Kim, but he can't due to the fake phone number and name. And the movie ends with the real Hinspeter wishing that he could see Kim again. So some of the things I learned I learned about the atrocities that the government committed against its citizens to suppress the freedom of speech and press. And I also learned that Korea has since changed since its history of government corruption. And I also learned about the involvement of foreign governments, including the United States and media within South Korea. And there's some interesting symbolism that I noticed. So Kim's shift of ideals throughout the movie, it kind of symbolizes personal interest versus interest at a higher level. Um, and it was pretty interesting to see these ideals shift throughout the movie because at the beginning, Kim mainly acts out of personal gain, where at the end he decides to support a cause bigger than his own, and his obsession with money and well-being accidentally allows him, or money and well-being of his daughter accidentally allows him to drive in speeder to Gwangju. And every time Kim tries to back out, his mindset changes. When he witnesses the events in Gwangju, he slowly realizes the cause he is supporting, and I think he, I think the movie uses Kim's divided beliefs to explore a situation similar to the trolley problem, whereas it's keeping his daughter safe versus helping the world know about the atrocities that are happening.